Hey, this is Josh.
And this is Sam. Welcome to Star Wars Deep Digging, a podcast about Star Wars. Uh, you probably know what part, season, episode we're on right now.
Yeah, just check the thumbnail. Okay. Mm. When I saw Padme hit her so strongly, and even a little of Anakin too, I knew my exile was nearly at an end. Would you believe I find it difficult to let it go? You've adapted. You've had to. No wonder that the desert feels like home to you now, or that being a Jedi Knight has become foreign. But that can change, and faster than you might dream possible. It will, in fact, be almost instantaneous. Transformation begun and completed the first time immediate danger beckons again. Qui-Gon looks forward to witnessing it. I've waited for this day for a very long time, Obi-Wan says. So long as it feels as though I've waited for it my entire life. To have it endangered, now, just as the great work begins. So many factors are in play. The future is difficult to know, even more so than before. Do you truly think your work has only just begun, my Padawan? They have begun using that title between them again, in recognition of how much more Obi-Wan is yet to learn. It is strange, still, to think of death as only the beginning of wisdom. Obi-Wan considers. Well, I mean, is it really wisdom if you're omniscient? That's a rhetorical question, by the way, in case you're curious. I mean, you can still answer it if you want to. You don't have to.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah. Obi-Wan considers. There were other great endeavors, other challenges, but the Clone Wars were long ago. For nearly 2 decades, I have been little more than a shadow waiting to become a Jedi Knight again. Again, did he never do any training?
I thought he was elevated to Knight the moment he killed the Sith Lord.
Well, no, I mean, he's obviously a master at this point. They're using Jedi Knight as just an generic term for Jedi. Just like they did in the opening prologue of Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon shakes his head. Already his physical self feels natural enough to him that he can express thought and emotion through gestures. Okay, that part will be important later. Battles and wars aren't the measure of a Jedi. Anyone can fight given a weapon and an enemy. Anyone can use a lightsaber given due training, or even good luck. Dig it, Gravis. But to stand and wait, to have so much patience and fortitude, that, Obi-Wan, is a greater achievement than you can know. Few could have accomplished it. Few still could have done so without turning to darkness. Sometimes when Obi-Wan considers it, he is awed by it. When Qui-Gon considers it, he is awed by his student's steadfastness. Every person Obi-Wan ever loved, Anakin, Satine, Padme, and Qui-Gon himself, came to a terrible end. Hey, no mention of Siri Tachi. Boo.
Yeah. Boo. Yeah, I agree with that.
3 of them died before his eyes. The other fell to a fate so bleak that death would have been a gift. The Jedi Order and Obi-Wan could have provided that gift, just saying. The Jedi Order that provided the entire framework of Obi-Wan's life was consumed by betrayal and slaughter. Every step of this long, unfulfilling journey is one Obi-Wan had to take alone, and yet he never faltered. The Iron Wooby. As the rest of the galaxy burned, his path remained true. It is the kind of victory that most people never recognize, and yet the bedrock of all goodness is built upon.
Yeah, basically, I'm hoping for this one Jedi survivor that comes up to Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan talks about the galaxy burning, and the Jedi says, "And whose fault is that? You're the one that trained Anakin. This is your fault, Obi-Wan. This is all your fault."
Or, just hear me out here, everything is Palpatine's fault.
Yeah, but that Jedi I'm talking about doesn't know that.
Fair point. Okay, lesson for everyone at home. When in doubt, blame Palpatine. And if it's not Palpatine, it's probably Tarkin. Even Obi-Wan doesn't see it. You see me in a kinder light than most would, old friend. I owe you that. After all, I'm the one who failed you. Failed me. They have never spoken of this, not once in all Qui-Gon's journeys into the mortal realm to commune with him. This is primarily because Qui-Gon thought his mistakes so wretched. 9 years of journeys. So obvious that Obi-Wan had wanted to spare him any discussion of it. Yet here, too, he has failed to do his Padawan justice.
Oh yeah, Obi-Wan's not the only one that made a mistake with Anakin. Qui-Gon also made a mistake with one of his Padawans.
Well, yeah, but we'll get to Xanatos much later, if at all. You weren't ready to be a Jedi Master, Qui-Gon admits. You hadn't even been knighted when I forced you to promise to train Anakin. Teaching a student so powerful, so old, so unused to our ways, that might have been beyond the reach of the greatest of us. To lay that burden at your feet when you are hardly more than a boy? To be a dad, basically. Anakin became a Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan interjects, a thread of steel in his voice. He served valiantly in the Clone Wars. His fall to darkness was more his choice than anyone else's failure. Yes, I bear some responsibility, and perhaps you do too, but Anakin had the training and the wisdom to choose a better path. He did not. All that is true. None of it is any absolution for Qui-Gon's own mistakes. But it is Obi-Wan who needs guidance now. These things can be discussed another time when they're beyond crude human language. Soon, very soon, the droids have begun cremating the Jawa bodies. Qui-Gon is substantial enough now to smell the ash. I mean, do you really need discussion if you're omniscient? You see, this is the problem with the otherworldly enlightenment thing. It makes everything completely pointless. But he is of the Force, and so he feels Luke's pain and horror as truly as his own. The sight of the burned bodies of Owen and Beru and Lars is as vivid as Obi-Wan standing only centimeters in front of him. Owen and Beru knew the risk when they took the child, and they took him anyway. Took him, protected him, loved him. It is as pure heroism as Qui-Gon has ever known. Obi-Wan senses it too, Qui-Gon can tell. Though at a greater remove, handicapped as he is by his physical form, his face falls, his fear replaced by sorrow. Determination swiftly follows. I didn't tell Luke the whole truth about Anakin, Obi-Wan says. Someday he'll have to know. And here comes the retroactive explanation for the plot hole. You've only just become acquainted with the boy. Had you tried to tell him the whole story today, that would have been a greater mistake than anything else you've ever done. It would have planted seeds of doubt, confusion, even anger, which would have led him down his father's path.
So basically, Luke's all like, I'm going to go fight Darth Vader and kill the monster that killed my father. Then Obi-Wan's looking at the window thinking, how do I tell him?
Because if you do tell him, he'll cry. A lot. As Blue Milk Special taught us. Great webcomic, by the way, check it out. Yeah, that's as good an explanation for that plot hole as any. With a touch of his old rakish humor, Obi-Wan adds, or he would have decided I was every bit as crazy as Owen always told him I was and run along back home. That's not as funny as you think, Ben. I've seen the timeline in which, and we'll get to that later, but I've seen the timeline in which Luke did something like that, and oh man, it ended poorly for everyone involved, especially you, Obi. Qui-Gon knows that to have been a very real possibility, and the end to which that would have led. Luke would now be lying alongside the Larses. Okay, different alternate timeline. When he's ready, stable, steady, strong in the Force, then there will be time. Also, this opens the possibility of alternate timelines. Is Infinity's canon? Like, I know everyone would hate the idea of a multiverse, but seriously, it would be so much fun.
I actually agree that I agree there should be a Star Wars multiverse, because then I could walk over into the Death Star, go to the throne room, and prove to everyone once and for all that Starkiller is not dead. Until I find his dead corpse.
Yeah, you can just drag another version of him from... Well, okay, multiverse doesn't necessarily mean infinite verse. We would have Legends, canon, the Lego stuff, Infinities, probably a whole bunch of crossovers, like with Soul Calibur. Moving on. Obi-Wan nods, not reassured enough to focus fully on Qui-Gon. You're very nearly corporeal. I've never seen you appear like this. It is a matter of learning to both claim the physical world and detach oneself from it. Okay, so here's another retcon that the Kenobi series made. Qui-Gon says, he had not struggled toward that goal at first. Only after Anakin's fall did he push himself to emerge fully. It was the work of very nearly a decade.
Oh yeah, about alternate realities. One, isn't that why the world between world exists? But now that I think about it, it's more of a timeline thing. Basically, the whole multiversal Star Wars thing is a wormhole.
You mean a rabbit hole?
Yeah, big rabbit hole.
Or rather, a leppy hole. Okay, so the work of very nearly a decade does actually line up perfectly with, Anyways, This he did for Obi-Wan. At least his Padawan did not have to spend his years in the desert entirely alone. A matter of finding center, of calming one's soul and giving oneself completely to the Force. Some Jedi choose to transition between life and death in that way, though I could scarcely have imagined it when I was alive. Even after death, we continue to learn. I look forward to learning the art someday, Obi-Wan says. Hopefully in the distant future. It's another of his dry jokes, nothing more, but Qui-Gon is moved regardless. Obi-Wan has so little time left to live. To Qui-Gon, the death seems inevitable, almost neutral. He can even anticipate the reunion with his Padawan. But after all his losses, all his sacrifice, all those endless years in the desert, Obi-Wan still wants more life. After all this time, I find I am not yet ready. This, too, is a kind of courage. Qui-Gon remembers the vitality of mortal existence, fondly, but distantly. At least he has something better to offer Obi-Wan. Thank you, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan says. As always, your wisdom sustains me. As your strength always sustained me. Qui-Gon senses the boy's return. Before long, Luke's landspeeder will appear on the horizon. Obi-Wan needs to turn his attention elsewhere. We shall meet again soon, my Padawan. I will never hesitate to call upon you. That's not the kind of meeting Qui-Gon means, but there's no point in saying so. The truth will unfold itself in time. It always does. Qui-Gon allows his awareness to spread outward from this place, until Obi-Wan is only part of the symphony of life around him. The snakes burrow deep beneath the dunes. Insects spin webs among the sands. Sunshine suffuses them all with warmth until Qui-Gon can let go completely, releasing his body and even his name until he is again one with the Force. As Obi-Wan will soon learn, the most beautiful form of mastery is the art of letting go. Beru White Sun Lars by Meg Cabot. Sorry, there's a reference I could make here, but it's so utterly irrelevant that I'm just going to skip it.
I remember when Beru and Owen were just dating.
Yeah, back when Beru was part of the anti-slavery movements, and those fun little debates she would have with Clay Higgins. She's from a good family. It's not as if I wasn't expecting it. The day Ben Kenobi put that little baby in my arms was both the best and worst day of my life. Best because Owen and I couldn't have a child of our own, and suddenly we did. By the way, Beru and Owen don't know about Anakin being Vader. Obi-Wan never mentioned that.
They only met Anakin once, and he seemed like a cool guy.
And worse because, well, I knew that happiness was never going to last. And I was right, wasn't I? Look, I get it. To most people, I'm just Luke Skywalker's Aunt Beru, the old lady who's always bustling around the kitchen, pouring everyone blue milk. I'm the one who wouldn't stop nagging Luke's Uncle Owen to let him go to the academy already. He can't stay here forever. Most of his friends have gone, I kept saying. It means so much to him. It wasn't because I wanted Luke to go, it's because that's what Luke wanted. And I wanted Luke to have whatever he wanted. And
also Anakin did seem like a cool guy, except for the whole Sand People massacre. That Owen and Beru thought, it's probably just puberty or something. Oh yeah, also what Beru was saying, most of his friends have already gone. That's true. Biggs and Tank have already left to join the Imperial Academy.
I think we're all aware of that scene by now. But thank you. And okay, there might have been a small part of me that was hoping that if you went, things might turn out alright. Maybe if Owen had listened to me, we'd both be alive today. Visiting Luke wherever he is now, spoiling his kids rotten, or watching the twin sunset here on Tatooine. So many what-if possibilities. But I guess we'll never know now. Look, I'm not complaining. You're not complaining about dying? Griffin Ghost, man. My family's been in the moisture farming business for generations. Been established in Legends for a while. I knew what I was getting into when I married Owen Lars. Well, at least I thought I did. Do you want to know a secret? I had other options. I took a cooking class in school, and the teacher told me that my blue milk cheese was the best he'd ever tasted. He said it was as if I'd been born to make blue milk cheese. He said I could easily have had my own place. Cafe, or maybe even a little restaurant in Anchorhead. Can you imagine me, Beru White Sun Lars, with my own cafe? Well, of course, we saw her cooking in one scene, so therefore she's good at it. I won't lie to you, I thought about it. Especially right before Luke came along, when Owen and I just found out we'd never be able to have kids of our own. Our only resort was to start seeing one of those fancy fertility droids in Mos Eisley. It almost didn't seem worth it, though, when you consider what Mos Eisley was like back in those days. Oh, my stars, the noise and the dirt and all the violence. You could get shots just stepping into a cantina, let alone trying to serve a nice blue milk cheese to people there. Thanks to Luke, it never came to that. Still, there's been plenty of times I've wondered if I made a mistake. That day old Ben Kenobi showed up with the baby, my first instinct was to run. I may be a country girl who has never been off planet, but even I'm aware that when a Jedi walks up to you and says, "Here, have a baby," it's not going to end well. I mean, does that happen often?
Well, no, but I think I know what Brew's saying. But basically, something happened. Here's an orphan baby. Basically, I hope keep this kid safe or something very bad will happen.
Yeah, that shows up in all sorts of stories, and it usually doesn't end well for people who adopt the orphan. Well, usually. Superman's parents are... I'm getting off topic. Or we thought, Baru, listen to your teacher. Put the baby down and go do what you were born for. But it turns out when someone puts a sweet little newborn into your arms, you can't say no. Even if that baby is your husband's nephew by a stepbrother who's embraced the dark side. Okay, she knows that now because she's a ghost. I'm going with that headcanon, okay? Because that he's got too much of a farmer. His father in him with that big smile on her face. No. She would not do that if it was Vader, okay? I'm not buying that, okay? I'm not buying it. You know, things may not turn out well, but just like with blue milk cheese, you do the best you can with it. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Luke was such a sweet, happy little boy. He was no trouble at all. Not to say he wasn't mischievous, always getting into one scrape or another. But he didn't have a mean bone in his body. Unlike a certain someone I could mention. Alright, fine, I'll mention him. I mean his father. Man, she should have met Leia. Yeah. Leia always did take after Anakin. When you spend almost every minute of every day with someone for 19 years, making him finish a milk...
Yet, Leia basically Leia basically hates Anakin / Vader's guts, even after Anakin / Vader dies a good guy.
Yeah, but she always afraid she was gonna be Lady Vader. And, yeah, ironically, Luke's the only one who's ever gone full dark side. I mean, if you accept Dark Empire as canon, which a lot of people don't, but sometimes they do, nostalgia and all. Unlike a certain someone, I can... Oh, wait. Making him finish his milk to help him grow and washing his leggings for him. You had to know that person. And like I told Owen, Luke had too much of his father in him. But I meant all the best parts. And his mother too, from what little I knew of her. Nah, still not buying it.
She lived with... Yeah, well... Oh, wait.
Never mind.
Probably thinking of someone else.
Yes. It was obvious to me from the time Luke was a baby that he was going to grow up to do something amazing, and I'm not just saying that because I was his aunt, I just knew. And I was right. I'm not trying to take credit for Luke's accomplishments either, although Owen and I did try to do our best with him. I always thought it was so sad what happened to Luke's parents, and his grandmother too. I was there for her funeral. I served blue milk, and cheese, to everyone after. I think my teacher was wrong. Making cheese wasn't what I was born to do. I was born to make people feel good when everything around them seemed just awful. Which, if you think about it, is what all good parents and cafe owners are meant to do. After Luke came to live with us, I told Owen, we're going to raise this boy like he was our own. He's never going to know a day of unhappiness and to make up for all the terrible things that happened before he was born. And they did a good job of it, too, as Reva could tell you. I really think I succeeded, except for Owen's not allowing Luke to the academy, and of course what happened to Owen and me that day with the stormtroopers.
Actually, I'll get to that later.
Okay. I really wish Luke hadn't seen that. Then again, if he hadn't, he never would have gone off with old Ben and met the princess, destroyed the Death Star, and saved the galaxy. So I guess things did turn out alright in the end, didn't they? Especially now, because up until this moment, no one has ever given me a chance to tell my story. So thank you for that. Now go drink your milk. May the Force be with you.
Force Ghost Wall Break.
Okay, that's a good one. The Luckless Rhodian by Renee Adia. I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong. Today would be the day. Greedo had known it last night as he'd watched the binary sunset sink along the hazy horizon of Tatooine. After many long years, justice would finally be served upon Han Solo.
Greedo, here's a tip. If you finally get Han Solo, why not go to your other most hated enemy? Why don't you go and kill your other most hated enemy? That one speeder bike that you keep falling off of.
Yeah, one thing you gotta know about Greedo is that he is one of the most pathetic aliens in fictional history. Right up there with Invader Zim.
He did not read the Bounty Hunter's Guide, thought Bounty Hunter's stuff was just a bunch of rules, and basically he fell off a speeder bike twice, and it was parked.
Not to mention all the slapstick in the underworld, the Yavin Basilica comics, and the stupid decision he made in the Han Solo and Chewbacca comics, and that time he nearly got himself killed stealing Ki-Adi-Mundi's lightsaber, and when Anakin beat him up as a little kid, and when he lost to Baron Papanoida. He's done nothing but lose and lose and lose since the moment he was born. You almost feel bad for him. The Rhodian bounty hunter sensed something deep within his chest and catch flame. Some long-denied satisfaction. Today, Greedo planned to put that arrogant Corellian scum back in the cesspit where he belonged. His dark eyes narrowed against a gust of billowing sand as he trudged through the winding streets of Mos Eisley toward a familiar cantina. A smile nearly curled up his green lips when the arched entrance came into view. As luck would have it, his quarry had been sighted just yesterday, seeking business in the very same place Greedo often transacted his own deals. Of course, the two kinds of deals in question differed wildly. The cowardly Corellian was a mere smuggler, whereas Greedo dealt in a variety of death. How many people do you think Greedo's actually killed? Could probably count it on one hand, right? He'd even begun taking bounties from the greatest crime lord of the Outer Rim, and Jabba the Hutt was known to be particular when it came to his associations. Save for the cowardly Han Solo, of course.
Let's see how many people Greedo killed. What's that number before 1?
Nice. Greedo sneered at the group of hooded Jawas crouched outside the cantina door. He would never understand what Unsulta had found so appealing in Solo all those years ago. The smuggler had always been a worthless excuse for a man, while Unsulta had been everything Greedo had cherished in a woman. In case you're curious, no, this is not a reference. Unsulta never shows up in anything outside of this. Ever. Such a waste. Kicking aside the nearest Jawa as he passed. Jawa kicking. Think he got dark side points for that?
Actually, yes, since Jawas are living people.
Greedo strode through the entrance, careful not to make eye contact with anyone present. His gaze remained fixed on the bar in the dusty center of Chalmun's cantina. In case anyone's curious, Chalmun is actually a Wookiee. Thankfully, the band was playing a less noxious strain of music than usual. Hey, do not slander the modal notes.
Yeah, well, with what Greedo's doing, kicking Jawas, insulting the modal nodes, he's gonna get his comeuppance.
There was only so much he could stand from these particular biff, especially without the solace of several drinks in his stomach. Even still, it was a fitting backdrop. Figuring Dan and the model node's tuneless strains set alongside an occasional brawl. For as long as he could remember, Mos Eisley's spaceport had been a beacon for the art of the underworld. It was the same underworld of Greedo's childhood when he'd been brought from Rhodia to live on Tatooine. Okay, so maybe some of his story okay, so like okay, so if we take into account his Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina backstory, with the retcon that was made to that backstory to fit the deleted scene for Phantom Menace into canon, this book could be referencing that. Or maybe it's just a classic case of all Rhodians were born on Rhodia. As luck would have it today, his quarry had chosen to take up temporary residence on one of Greedo's homeworlds. Okay, both of them are referenced as his homeworld. It's definitely recanonizing that. I'm sure of it.
I think it's always been Rhodia.
Today would be the day. Greedo took a seat at the bar and signaled the sneering bartender for a drink. He watched the silver and brass pipes above gleam dully beneath a fog of swirling hookah smoke. Danik Jericho's? The tumbler of Corellian red swirled in his hands as he awaited his prey in silence. After he downed 3 of the brews, his attention drifted toward the arrival of a towering Wookiee. Since Chalman, the purveyor of this establishment, was himself a Wookiee, the sight of these overgrown beasts was far from unusual in these parts. But this particular Wookiee caught Greedo's attention. His long green fingers clenched around his tumbler. From the corner of his eye, Greedo watched the Wookiee begin making his rounds. Watched and waited. "Hey!" The barkeep pointed over Greedo's shoulder, his already disdainful face contorted with irritation. "We don't serve their kind here." Greedo glanced behind him to see a wide-eyed boy with 2 droids clambering in his shadow. The boy looked exactly like the kind of fool who didn't know any better and would likely die for it before the day was out. Why anyone would bring in droids to take up the spaces of living, breathing patrons, Greedo would never know. "What?" the boy asked, his ridiculous eyes going even wider. The barkeep ground out his retort. "You're droids. They'll have to wait outside."
I just thought of this. Attention, scum. I am Darth Vader. Hey, you're gonna have to wait outside. What? You're a droid. We don't serve droids.
Lego Star Wars is a gold mine. Though I could just be nostalgic. The boy muttered something unintelligible to his droids. The fool would be lucky to make it through an entire drink at Chalmers, never mind another year of his life in general. Oh, what a year it'll be. Untried bantha fodder. Snorted to himself, Greedo turned back toward the bar, continuing to tune out the mindless prattle of those seated nearby while the van changed its tune. His gaze settled on a beguiling young creature across the way with eyes that shone like the barrel of a newly polished blaster. Eyes just like those of Unselta. Curse her for being as big a fool as that boy with the droids. Greedo would have loved her as she deserved to be loved, not dallied with her like the Corellian scumbag had chosen to do. Greedo continued observing Solo's first mate from his periphery, biding his time. He was patient. The Wookiee would lead Greedo's quarry right into his clutches, into a justice so long unserved. He was distracted from his musings by raised voices. That same awkward boy was engaged in the beginning of an altercation with exactly the kind of creature who would bring about his inevitable end. What kind of shirt was the boy wearing anyway? What sort of simpleton wore white in a spaceport as dirty as Mos Eisley? Yeah, Luke wearing white in a desert never really made sense. Sure enough, the boy flew back into a table at the first sign of a crossword. Now, a crossword isn't a crossword puzzle. As in a word that is cross. Further distracted by the ensuing commotion, Greedo twisted around in time to see an old man in a peculiar robe flash a weapon he'd heard of in passing, but never seen in person. Okay, so possible sign that this story isn't canon, because with the Galaxy's Edge comics we know that Greedo has literally used Ki-Adi-Mundi's lightsaber. An ancient saber fashioned from glowing blue light. The weapon snarled through the air, and the instigator's severed arm struck the floor in almost the same breath. Amid the strangled screams, Greedo laughed to himself. With nary a flinch, the Bith resumed playing their tuneless music. Best tune of all time. You take that back. After all, these kinds of disturbances were far from unusual in a place like Chalman's Cantina. Indeed, if the purveyor of the establishment had been present, he undoubtedly would have relished the spectacle. 1 killing and 1 dismemberment. Not bad for a Wednesday. Wookiees were known to enjoy a good dismemberment as much as any Rhodian did. I remember playing Lego Star Wars and ripping stormtroopers' arms off. At the reminder, Greedo craned his neck closer to the...
That's what Wookiees do, rip people's arms off.
Yeah, we've established that. Greedo craned his neck closer toward the particular Wookiee he'd taken note of earlier. The hulking, fur-covered stranger had loped toward the bar and was now in the midst of a hushed conversation with the old man in possession of the snarling saber. Greedo remained hunched and alert as the Wookiee signaled to someone hovering in the darkest fringes of the cantina. His stomach tightened into a coil of knots. Solo was on his way. A moment later, the smug coward ambered toward a table on the left of the bar and began chatting with the saber-wielding old man and the foolish boy. The knot in Greedo's stomach became a jumble. Anticipation flared through the center, mingling with that same satisfaction like kindling to a flame. Today would be the day.
Basically when Greedo said tuneless music, basically all the myths who've already died are just screaming, don't make us come up there.
Ah, yeah. Masters of music. Music. The afterlife's probably cluttered with them. Continuing to bide his time, continuing to wait for an opportunity. He kept silent and still while a contingent of Imperial troops collected in front of the bar drawn by the earlier commotion. The barkeep was all too eager to point them in the direction of the fool boy and his elderly bodyguard, who quickly ducked out of sight. The stormtrooper sought to detain Solo. Well, his opportunity would be lost. He thought for a moment about confronting him once and for all, with little concern for the presence of the Empire's lackeys. But the risk was too great. Greedo could not risk the additional possibility of rousing Jabba's anger. If Greedo did decide to throw caution to the wind, he might lose the chance to stare his enemy in the face and experience the supreme satisfaction of watching Solo scream in fear, like the coward he was. Greedo stood from the bar and moved into the shadows nearest to the alcove where Solo sat with his first mate, smiling as though he had not a care in the galaxy. A breath of relief passed Greedo's lips when the stormtroopers passed the table and continued on their way. As soon as the Wookiee left and Solo stood from the table, Greedo made his move, yanking his blaster from its holster. He would not waste this opportunity. Today would be the day. Going somewhere, Solo? He said in Huntese as he shoved the barrel of the blaster into Solo's vest. Yes, Greedo, as a matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss. Boss. The coward backed away, shoved toward the same alcove, his hands raised at his sides as he sought to convey a desire for peace. Tell Jabba that I've got his money. He sat down at the table. It's too late, Greedo said as he took the seat opposite Solo, a white lantern glowing before him, bathing the air between them in cool light. Solo slouched into the back of the bench, an amused half-smiles beginning to curve up one side of his face. Fury shot through Greedo's chest. You should have paid him when you had the chance. Jabba's put a price on your head so large every bounty hunter in the galaxy will be looking for you. I'm lucky I found you first. He laughed under his breath. Perhaps luck had nothing to do with it. It had been his patience, his intuition, his hatred. Perhaps if Unselta could see them now, she would not have made the same mistake she had made those many years ago. Hate filled the hollow around Greedo's heart. The mere sight of Solo tossing his booted leg onto the tabletop and grinning with casual arrogance only heightened Greedo's growing rage. Greedo, tell Han to put his hands on the table. You are going to die. The suggestion of a frown fell upon Solo's face. It was gone in almost the same instant. Yeah, but this time I've got the money. He waved his left hand through the air, once more the picture of supreme arrogance. If you give it to me, I might forget I found you. Forget? Greedo could never forget, but he would gladly take the scum's money before delivering him to Jabba. Okay, so we know that Greedo was lying. Or perhaps he blasted a hole through Solo's chest, just like Unselta had done to him. Solo winced with irritation. I don't have it with me. He glanced over his shoulder and began circling his fingers across the rough wall at his back, as though he were toying with something only he could see. His head lolled against the gleaming bracer above the bench. Tell Jabba, Jabba's through with you. Unmistakable irritation laced Greedo's words. He has no time for smugglers who drop their shipments at the first sign of an Imperial cruiser. Even I get boarded sometimes, Solo's retort was curt. You think I had a choice? You can tell that to Jabba. He may only take your ship. Greedo's finger tightened on the trigger of his blaster. Solo's left hand fell from the wall. Over my dead body. Whatever lingering traces of amusement that remained vanished from his eyes as a shadow descended across his features. That's the idea. Triumph spread through Greedo as satisfaction began to take root. But what's more, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. He grinned, peace tinkling the air around him with a strange sweetness. At last, vengeance would be his. He would live to see Jabba rob Han Solo of the only thing the coward prized, and it would be glorious. Yes, I bet you have. Solo glanced to one side as though in thought. The last thing the luckless Rhodian saw was the flash of bright light. His last memory was that of bitter injustice. I hope this means that Han shot first. Not for Nothing by Mur Lafferty. Excerpt from The Lady S. Jossamer, My Life as a Muddle Note, a memoir by Ekmal Gaunt. Pretty much the only notable thing here is that Ekmal Gaunt was male in Legends, but it doesn't really make much difference. there's basically no difference between male and female Biff. I mean, even the reproductive organs don't really matter because they could just clone themselves. Chapter 3. Not for nothing. Tatooine was the worst place in the galaxy for Biff. I guarantee you I can find a worse place. But, there are so many deaf worlds. Why waste time naming them all? When your skin is milky white pink and your eyes are lidless and tearless, a planet with 2 suns, high heat, and blowing sands is essentially a jail sentence. When Vigor and Dan and the model nodes got a dig on this planet, we all protested.
No, it's not. You want to know a worse planet for Biff? Kessel.
Oh, I was going to say Mustafar.
Oh. That works too.
Our skin will burn off our skulls. Because, Mustafar is a place where your skin actually would burn off your skulls.
Yeah.
Techmore said, "What if we get sand in our eyes, Dan?" I've demanded. I have the best eyes of the whole band, and even I find myself particularly susceptible to irritants. How are we going to play when we are staggering around looking for an eye wash? Do they even have eye washes on Tatooine? Then came line number 1. We are invited to play for the ruling lord on Tatooine. Wayne, I'm sure his place will have all the accommodations we will need. He didn't say that the ruling lord was a hut, a species that's not really known for hospitable and clean living spaces. Well, I mean, there was that one guy with a sauna. And came to aim line number 2. We are only there for a standard week, tops. We were there for over a year. Wow, just over a year? I really need to look up what happened after they left. These guys must have some kind of interesting story. Then the best, line number 3. The money is incredible. Now, if I had been Dan, I would have let the group know the facts this way. I've got some bad news. I'm in serious debt to a hut and have sold all of you into indentured servitude in the sandy armpit of the galaxy. Once we pay off the debt, we will have to find other gigs in order to get enough money to get the hell off the planet. Working for the hut will be the worst job you will ever have. We didn't talk to him for weeks after the truth made itself known. We played for Jabba and his companions within the place. Were they companions? Visitors? Prisoners? We were never sure. Palace, please. I've seen palaces. I performed for kings. This was no palace. After a few months, we finally accepted that this was our modern life. And the one bit of good news was we were still the model nodes, which meant we played the best music in the galaxy.
You want a palace? You want a king to perform to? Go to Onderon.
Poor Alderaan. Poor Alderaan. Never mind that was for a crime lord slug and his lackeys and slaves, but it reminded us of our humble beginnings when you took what gigs you got offered. You also pay attention. You never know what kind of dirt you can do. Yeah. We watch people wheedle, cajole, and deal with Jabba. One interesting thing about Biff that other species don't really know is how we can separate different sounds around us. It's what makes us such good musicians. We can listen to different instruments separately or together to make sure everyone is in tune and working well together. We can also listen to conversations that otherwise would be drowned out in lesser ears. So we were privy to many of Jabba's dealings that happened while we played, and he had no idea. We learned to know and hate many of the residents of this world. One of my least favorite people was Greedo, a Rhodian bounty hunter. He is actually the person who found Figure and Dan and delivered him to Jabba. We hadn't known Dan had a price on his head. Then, the things your band leader doesn't tell you. Wow, Greedo actually managed to accomplish something. Dan had me keep a closer eye on Greedo and find some dirt on him. I pointed out the bucket of sand I had to wash out of my eyes every night and said I got dirt on everyone. That's right, that I got dirt on everyone. It's right there. But he told me to get over it and stop complaining.
So, basically, according to the Greedo chapter and this chapter, these two guys hate each other.
Well, technically, Ichabod's a woman in this version. Brave card to play as he put us in this situation, but Dan always was a terrible gambler. So I watched Greedo. He would bring in small-time criminals who owed Jabba, get a pat on the head and a handful of credits, and stalk away, very proud of himself. Big fish, small ponds. Or rather, normal fish, tiny ponds. I kept track of the money he demanded from Jabba, and the money that he got, and the times he would slip keys or blasters to his quarry so they could escape, and then he would bring them back in for another reward. He brought in one poor Jawa 3 times. You think Jabba would get suspicious after all. So what the heck did that Jawa do? When it was time to pay off our debt, Jabba asked for more than twice what he said Dan initially had owed him. We expected this, so Dan counteroffered information instead of more credits. That's when he brought Greedo down. Jabba was furious at the bounty hunter, and he actually let us go. In the middle of the desert. And I wonder how Greedo talked his way out of that.
I don't know, but I would also like to say Tatooine is, yes, the armpit of the galaxy. The other armpit of the galaxy is a place called Terrace.
Oh, I thought it was Apifar. I mean, Terrace isn't so bad. It's the Coruscant of the Outer Rim. Or it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks nice on the surface, but try going deeper into Terrace, and then deeper, and then deeper, and then deeper.
Coruscant has the exact same problem. Not Nar Shaddaa, though. It wears its ugliness right on the surface.
Oh, right. I'd just say Apifar is the void of the galaxy.
Oh yeah, really empty place, except for the occasional town here and there. But when a giant slug surrounded by several heavies with weapons sets you free in the middle of the desert, you thank him kindly for the freedom and kept moving. We counted our stars that he let us go at night so we could at least avoid the suns. I honestly didn't expect him to let us go at all. So thanks, Jabba. I'll buy you a cup of slug the next time we see you. Editor's note. Since the writing of this memoir, Jabba the Hutt has been murdered by an unknown assassin within his palace. Jabba the Hutt cannot be thanked anymore. Still, the author requested we leave this entreaty in the text. Okay, so this was written before the events of Return of the Jedi, and also nobody knows about the exact details of what happened with the sail barge if they think that Jabba was killed in the palace. Interesting. We made it to Mos Eisley soon after the sun's rose, which was good because my hands were beginning to turn pink, and my eyes were burning. We found a place for the band to stay while Dan, like a good leader, went to get us a gig. Tech went with him because he wanted to make sure Dan wouldn't go and gamble away our new freedom in pursuit of more credits. Frigger and Dan's gambling problem. We'll get to that more in Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah, he has a big gambling problem. You want somewhere to gamble? Go to Canto Bight.
Oh, come on. There are so many casinos all over the galaxy. Really, the list is like 100 long.
Or Canto Bight, or Nar Shaddaa, or the underlevels of Coruscant. Yeah, there are a lot of casinos.
In fact, I don't think you even need to go to the underlevels of Coruscant. There are plenty of casinos just on the surface. Now is when I suppose I have to answer the question you've been asking yourself. Why in all of the galaxy do we choose to stay with Dan? He put us in slavery to a hut. He got us marooned on a planet that is antithetical to Biff. He gambles like a drunken uncle with bad luck. The reason should be obvious. Figure Dan is the best composer and band leader you will ever find this side of the galaxy. We know that if we left, we'd never be able to find another leader quite like him. When we're getting thrown into shackles or washing sand out of our eyes, it's hard to appreciate him. When we're playing, nothing in all the world is better. We found 2 cheap rooms to keep all 8 of us and played a game of hammer dice to decide who would be stuck sweeping the filthy place, who had to cover the windows, and who was able to sit and relax from the horrible travel we'd suffered. I was stuck with the window duty, and as I unrolled the black fabric to protect us from the glare. Black fabric.
Oh.
I got the sight of a slim green snout sticking out from a cloak scurrying down the road. Uh-oh. I secured the fabric and then asked if anyone knew where Dan and Tech had gone. The rest of them shrugged, and I grabbed my cloak, left the apartment, and headed back into the Tatooine heat. Now that we've had a bit of a rest and some not-so-brackish water to drink, I was able to take a look at the new town we inhabited. It was better than Jabba's palace, but that's not saying much. Hot, sandy, run down, and no one would look you in the eye. Also, stormtroopers patrolled the streets. One stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. We're looking for 2 droids. Okay, so they'd only been there for we still haven't figured out over how much time the events of A New Hope take place. It had to have been at least a few months, right? Maybe close to a year, depending on the time skip between Rogue One and A New Hope.
I'd say the band has been here for 1 year.
Well, okay, it can't have been a whole year because if the stormtroopers are already 11 months max. One stopped me with I haven't seen anything, I said, and then realized I had an opportunity. Around here, anyway. But I just spent some time at Jabba the Hutt's palace, and I'm pretty sure he bought him at least two new droids recently. What do they look like? He demanded. One was green, or maybe blue, I said, guessing. He stood back on his heels, and although I couldn't see his face, he exuded a mood of either disbelief or reluctance. A trooper with an orange half sleeve came up to him. Pauldron, called a pauldron. What have you found? He asked. She says she saw a droid like that in the area of the hut's domicile, his companion said, as if not wanting to deliver the information. Check it out, he said, and left. The remaining trooper took another look at me, and I could feel the dislike radiating off him. Good luck, I said, and scurried away. I had kept an eye on Greedo as he headed with purpose down the street. Stormtroopers visiting Jabba the Hutt's palace to see... Okay, that practically writes itself. I want to read that short story.
Those troopers are dead.
I mean, I'm sure they could slip out so long as they don't say anything too bad. Maybe they should bring a Dark Trooper with them. Keep them safe. I mean, at least they need some kind of droid that understands Huttese. I wish I'd known where Dan had gone, but I had to think that he was looking for a gig, so he would be searching for bars and dance halls. Mos Eisley didn't look like...
There aren't really many Dark Troopers left. Dark Troopers are pretty much scattered throughout the galaxy. The rest blew up with the ship.
Yeah, which... Wait a minute, that hasn't happened yet.
Wait, it hasn't?
You do realize Dark Forces takes place after A New Hope, right?
I did not realize that at all.
Well, it has to, because the opening scene is Kyle Katarn stealing the Death Star plans, or as it has been retconned, a fragment of the Death Star plans. Mos Eisley didn't look like a place with many dance halls, but it did look like a place people would need a drink. I inquired of a passing woman where the closest bar was, and she pointed me a few doors down. Luckily, Greedo had already passed this bar, so I ducked in. And Dan and Tech were inside, speaking with a large Wookiee. A disgruntled Rhodian, taller and darker skinned than Greedo, was packing up a food and making a big production out of it. He was pushed by Dan rudely, shouting that no one fires Dodo Bodano Weedo. Dan did make things much better by shouting after him that Shulman just had fired Dodo Bodano Weedo. Remember him? Jabba's Palace? Special edition?
Yeah.
Dan spied me. Hey, Cabell, this is Chalman, owner of Chalman's Cantina. I get it, I said. Can we talk for a second? Dan sent Tech to talk to me while he palled around with our new boss. What a pit, huh? Tech asked, looking around the cantina. Better than Jabba's, I said. From then on, better than Jabba's would be how he would describe anything that was terrible. Damning by faint phrase and all that. And speaking of which, I saw Greedo sniffing around outside. If he finds us in here, we could have a problem. Tech grinned at me. The Wookiee says he comes in all the time, but this is the safest place on the planet. He pointed to the signs on the wall listing in several languages the rules of the cantina. I scanned the rules and then read them at a slower pace. I smacked Tech upside the head. That says applaud the band, not do not under any circumstance attack the band, I said. That doesn't guarantee safety. Do not under any circumstance attack the band. I would love for there to be some place in real life, any sort of restaurant that has that as part of the rules. Because if it does, there is a story there, and it is wonderful. Oh, you're right, he said. He looked back over at Dan, who was signing the contract. I groaned. Well, Tech said, at least he's not selling us into slavery again. Dan came over all smiles. We started now. Get the rest of the band over here. You do know that Greedo is a regular customer here, and he's not going to be thrilled about you giving him up to Jabba, I said. We have a Wookiee on our side. What can go wrong? Wow, people really love Wookiees. Chalman's Cantina was better than Jabba's. That's what we can say about it. When things go wrong, you can try to see how your situation challenges you. We have played in award ceremonies against the wind, in the middle of a rainstorm, and for lords and ladies whose kind of fun would be to whip prisoners and feed them to rancors. That last one was Jabba. Did you guess? Well, Jabba's guards have whips. That's got to be a sight. At the cantina, we were shoved onto a small dais on the counter, having to get cozy with one another while we played to Ant's furious tunes. The stage was tight and the customers were unenthusiastic, but these kinds of challenges are what I live for. However, I didn't realize what else would happen that afternoon. First, Chalman. Wait a minute. That was their first day? Okay, that's got to get retcons. Come on. It's just no fun for that to have been their first day. First, Chalman, the super safe Wookiee that would save us all from Greedo, went home. He said he wasn't at the cantina all day and night, and he needed a break. He promised Wooer would protect us, but with a sidelong glance the bartender shot us, I thought that was unlikely. Oh, yeah, Wooer would happily please stand aside and let everybody die. So I kept my eyes on the door while we played. As the day went on, the canteen filled up with various unsavory characters. I had to hand it to Wooer, though. People got pushy or something, he put a stop to it. A bar fight started near us, one patron throwing one another one straight at the stage. As there was no free room on stage, we faltered on a song as we scrambled to get out of his way. Dan was furious and stopped the song while he called for Wooer to help out. The bartender threw both brawlers out and then fixed it with a grungy eye. You don't stop playing. Not for nothing. Got it? Dan nodded. We got it. We answered by starting the song again, and the beat Dan led with. People at these kind of places tended to look alike, all of them dirty and shady with something to hide. Outsiders stood out like a Bith on Tatooine. So when two humans entered the bar who stood out more than we did, they caught my eye. Wooer grunted at them to keep their droids outside, their gold prodigal droid and their blue astromech. I looked from them to Dan and then remembered the rule. Keep playing. I knew I should tell the Imperials about the droids during our break. There might be a reward that could get us all off the South Planet. I begged Dan with my eyes to get us a break, but he ignored me. Yeah. If only they'd had a break, the time one would be much worse. These droids were clearly sought after, but why did the stormtroopers outside find them? I was curious.
Yeah, basically, the rest of the band members are like, we've been playing for hours, figuring we need a break, and Dan's all like, no, we need more music.
Nice. I was curious, but the two men were clearly up to something, as carefully innocent as they acted. It was that innocence that made them stand out, honestly. Ironically, they blended right in once they were challenged by a huge brute, and the hairier of the men brought out a laser sword and cut the arm off their attacker. The arm smoked slightly on the floor, and its former owner shrieked. We stopped playing, of course, but then Wooer glared at us, and we hastily started up again. So, we were supposed to just keep on with the music while people were losing limbs? Yeah, I thought this place was better than Jabba's. Say what you will about the slug. He didn't mind if we startled out of tune when he murdered someone. Uh-oh. Come on, you remember that scene. Laptinik.
Oh, dang.
We'll rewatch it eventually, I promise.
Please do.
A large Athorian left his seat and headed for the bar, and I nearly swallowed my Jocelyn Reed when I spotted Greedo. Okay, Moment Undone is definitely still canon. I'm sure of it. I don't know how long this slimy little guy had been lurking behind him. Greedo looked right at us, and I faltered for a note or two. But we didn't stop. Not for nothing, Wooer said. Not for a severed limb, and definitely not for a bounty hunter with a grudge. Greedo went to the bar and ordered a drink, then watched us, unblinking. Dan instructed us to start a new song, fast and catchy. And we played it, defiantly ignoring Greedo. He watched, impassively, fingering the blaster at his hip. We were allowed to quit if our lives were in danger, right? Or did that fall under the not-for-nothing rule? I didn't know, but I was getting into the music when Tech poked me in the back. Greedo had started to move. He was stepping around the bar. I wondered wildly whether someone had cleaned up the arm or if he was going to trip. He didn't. And headed our way. Do you think Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan took the arm with them? I always wondered.
I don't know. If they were in a hurry, they probably left it. If they weren't, they had enough time to grab the arm.
I'm surprised they didn't die.
Obi-Wan is merciful, actually.
Oh, deliberately going for non-lethal wounds? Yeah, that makes sense. I tried to get Dan's attention, but he was too into the beat. In the middle of the song, I felt my double josmer begin to slip apart at the joints. Dan hadn't given me any chance to properly clean it, and I'd done a messy job oiling it up to make up for the ever-present sand. Now I was in trouble. Everyone had their own version of the next part, but most of them have to do with, look how clumsy Ichabod was. But here's what really happened. Everything you've heard, I did on purpose. I gave my Jocelyn a quick turn with both hands, opposite directions, and it fell apart. Valves and tubes went flying, and the circular joints that make up the body and all the vibrating reeds fell and rolled toward Greedo, who had picked up speed. He stepped on an oily joint and went flying backward. Dan scowled and pointed at the mess while still playing. Don't stop, not for nothing, right? I hopped off the stage and got on the floor to grab the discarded pieces of my equipment. Greedo was still down, rubbing his head, and I kept an eye on his blaster. I scurried to the other side of the dais to put my absurdly used instrument together. I wonder if Greedo would have gotten to Han faster otherwise. Oh well. The other patrons were giving Greedo a good ripping, and he finally got up, bright green with anger. He glared at me and then looked past me. His face changed, slackened, and then he smiled. If you can say his kind can smile. He turned and left us without a backward glance. What had delighted him so? I saw he was heading toward another white human male who was with a Wookiee conversing with Lure. Well, wait. White? They're only ever referred to as being fair skins. Anyway, someone he wanted more in Star Wars, that is. Someone he wanted more than us. That must be someone with either a big bounty or with whom Greedo had a bigger grudge. I got back on the dais and started playing an even faster song. One of Dan's favorites. Everyone looked exasperated, but still gratified that Greedo had been distracted. They still don't think I did it on purpose. I started thinking again about those droids and whether they could get us a good payout. Dan wouldn't give the band a break while the bounty hunter was around, so I wouldn't be able to tell the troopers outside until Greedo was gone. The human male and Wookiee were speaking with the other two humans, the ones with the droids. Everyone left the table but the human that had caught Greedo's interest. Greedo slipped over, and just as the human stood up, cornered him with a blaster. Greedo calmly encouraged him to sit back down. The tempo changed, and I had to focus on Dan for a moment, and then light faded, and Greedo slumped on the table in front of the human. I don't see a lot of humans, but I thought their facial expressions were more expressive than this man showed. The patrons around them looked over in alarm, and Wheeler looked ready to shoot the human himself, but the man tossed him some credits and sauntered out. Although we wanted to cheer, we kept playing. We didn't stop, not for nothing. We had been saved. That job had let us go, Greedo was done for. Our tip jar was filling up, and things might be looking up for the first time in a very long time. As we played another one of Dan's newest songs, Captivity had been strangely inspirational to him. I had to admit, I thought about those droids in the Stormtroopers that searched for... I thought about a possible reward, and then I decided that if the human could do us a favor without us knowing them at all, we could do those other humans a favor and not reward them. Paying kindness forward and all that. And we were safe now, and could keep playing, which is really all we ever wanted to do. Play and don't stop, not for nothing. Ooh, 4 in 1, that's... Well, okay, 3 and a half in 1. Alright, we got 3 minutes left. Definitely not enough time for the next story.
Yeah, also on Thursday night, I will be leaving for vacation, and I won't be back until next week, so I don't know if we can fit another podcast in this week.
Alright, you hear that? Another hiatus. I mean, I'm sure you all won't mind. Okay. So, let's see, okay, there's gotta be something we can talk about.
Let's see. Basically, the two stories about the modal nodes and Greedo did tie into each other pretty nicely. So I would say that.
Okay, I've heard a complaint about how Greedo's characterization in this book is a bit inconsistent between the short stories, and obviously we haven't read every single one that has Greedo in it, but I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that are.
Let's see. What else? I would say Beru White Sun was a ghost in her story. That's pretty much what makes sense.
Okay, so with Qui-Gon as the ghost of Star Wars past and Beru as the ghost of Star Wars present, who would you cast as the ghost of Star Wars future?
To be honest, I would actually guess either Yoda or Anakin.
Oh, I would have put Luke in there because, I don't think Yoda and Anakin are that far enough in the future.
Actually, yeah, I would put Luke. Or maybe Leia.
Maybe even Cole Skywalker.
Oh, yeah. I would actually put... Luke, Leia, or Cole Skywalker. That's who I would probably put.
Okay. So, we hope you all enjoyed.